Which fictional character's death made you cry the most? I am not a gun. You stay, I go. No following. Exactly. The Iron Giant always has me tear up. Not really cry, but Theoden's death in the Return of the King film gets me emotional. The dialogue between him and Éowyn is really powerful and the scene is acted out perfectly. I go to my fathers, in whose mighty company, I shall not now be ashamed. Nothing greater than complete redemption. Well, when you think of it that he was old, frail and dying under Saruman's curse and then got a second chance. He brought the besieged of Minas Tirith a much-needed respite. Fought the Oliphants to a standstill. He died at a rather glorious death. You left out his despair during Helm's Deep and his later regret and acceptance of that. He really overcomes his demons when he chooses to ride to Gondor's aid. Theoden's battle cry was death for a reason. It was an all-encompassing death to his fatherhood, kingship, failures, enemies, and self. Mama Coco and Coco. I'm 31 and I tear up uncontrollably when her grandson runs up to her and starts singing Remember Me just so she doesn't forget her father. God, that movie made me cry. That scene of Mama Coco holding on to her daughter, Abuelita during Proud Corazon, was such a bittersweet moment. Littlefoot's mom. I'm now at an age where I can imagine my mom dying. Back when I was a kid it didn't affect me because it was unimaginable. I'm in my 30s and still can't watch it without crying like a baby. My daughter wanted to watch it recently and I was a total mess. Philip J. Fry. Named for his uncle to carry on his spirit. That was super sad and well done in the episode. Futurama rocked. Seymour used to make me cry the hardest, but after growing up and becoming much closer with my sister, this one gets me more. The one that gets me is the one where he gets to talk to his mom in a shared dream. That moment he realizes she's dreaming of a moment that happened after he left for the future, that she's actually his mom and not a figment of his imagination, was just so touching. Those effing dogs from where the red fern grows. It's been over 20 years and I'm still scarred. Are you my brother? We have a family tradition where my dad would read it to us as we started being able to read longer books. We'd get to the point where we would read a paragraph, and he'd read the rest, then we'd eventually swap pages. I've never really seen my dad cry except reading that book. My brother wailed as they were dying. It's such a good book. But it will always be the first to emotionally scar me and my family. My dad even gave us all a copy for Christmas last year, as well as a flash drive with him reading it out loud. Keep that flash drive, treat it like gold, as one day it will be more valuable than you can imagine. BT 7274. Protocol 3, Protect the Pilot. The feels. I started a new playthrough the other day, and when Lastimosa turns BT over to Cooper and when BT calls Cooper a pilot for the first time, I started choking up. I was already thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I will not lose another pilot. Brendan Fraser's character in Scrubs. The whole episode builds up like everything is fine and then JD drops the "where do you think we are?" Gets me every time. The second you start blaming yourself for other people's death, there's no coming back. YouTube link. Have you listened to the rewatch podcast Zach and Donald are doing? They had Brendan Fraser on to talk about it. I love all of the actors, characters, and show even more now. Highly recommend trying the podcast. Was late to the party on this and started listening daily when taking walks and playing Xbox. Now I'm all caught up as they have to slow down releasing episodes and there's this void in my life, lol. Really great podcast though. Gave me a whole new appreciation for the show. I loved it back in high school but hadn't watched much in the last few years. Started rewatching along with the podcast and, my god newbie, this show is extremely underrated. When Ben dies on Scrubs. Seen the episode dozens of times. Still gets me. Laverne hit me hard. Or Mrs. Wilk getting infected from cabbage. Or when Dr. Cox freaks out over the death of his patient. God, that show knew how to jerk some tears. The Dr. Cox depression storyline was done incredibly well in the show. I can't imagine how the pain of being responsible for someone's passing would impact someone, but they conveyed that feeling very well. I think my fave episode of Scrubs is when they tell you 1 out of 3 people admitted to the hospital dies. And then you follow 3 patients who are being treated by JD, Turk, and Elliot. And throughout the whole episode you're wondering which one is going to die, only for all 3 of them to die in the end. I didn't cry, but it was poignant. That's one of the many things I loved about Scrubs. They didn't shy away from death. There's no star doctor rushing into a patient's room and pounding on their chest screaming, "I've never lost a patient and I'm not starting today." Live, damn it, live. No, every doctor in the hospital has lost several patients. There's a whole episode about how Cox has almost made it 24 hours without losing a patient, and that's such a rarity they get really superstitious about it. Hell, there's an episode where all the doctors admit that they have been responsible for patients dying before. And it's just a fact of the life of being a doctor in a hospital. Death just happens. Can't beat yourself up over it. Cox's quote, "Everything we do is just a stall," basically defines the whole mentality. It just adds another layer to the show and makes it brilliant. Also gives some room for some dark comedy. Amazing. Where do you think we are? Stan Pines. I know he didn't technically die, but the short amount of time during which he forgot his entire life felt like a death to me. Yup. It's time to rewatch Gravity Falls. Allow me to make it worse. If you rewatch it, pay attention to what Stan calls Mabel. In the beginning, he calls her kiddo. But as the series progresses, he starts calling her honey and sweetie. However, when he loses his memories, he's right back to calling her kiddo. I don't like you very much right now. More extreme version of this for me is Ice King from Adventure Time. Imagine slowly losing your mind, and continuing on anyways because that is what needs to be done. Like being slowly eaten alive, and choosing that fate for yourself because of how dedicated you are to those you care about. I just finished the series for the first time and I feel that. For a second I thought he was faking getting his memory back because the love for Mabel stayed, but when he threw Waddles on the bus I knew he was actually back. Fred Weasley. I was devastated for days thinking about how George was going to have to go on without him. Apparently, George was unable to cast a corporeal Patronus again after Fred's death. No. Want to feel even worse? Remember in Goblet of Fire when Fred and George try to cast a spell to make them older, so they could submit their names in the goblet, and it backfires, making them both old men? That's the only time they would be able to grow old together. Hi, why would you do this? For George, every mirror is the mirror of Erised. When Mrs. Weasley saw her children dead in a vision, she saw Fred and George dead together. Even in her worst nightmares, she couldn't imagine the two of them separated. From the bottom of my heart, F you. Especially Percy, because he just figured it out and came back, and then Fred dies. And right after he'd made his first joke too. The ghost of his last laugh etched on his face. Why do I still remember that? In the 5th book when Molly Weasley is dealing with the boggart as it turns into the dead bodies of each family member, it still forms Fred and George as a unit. Even when being faced with her worst fear she couldn't imagine the twins being separated. Now for a moment of levity, people like to spread this urban legend that when filming that scene the actors for the twins had this really dramatic moment where they cried and hugged each other and it's all heartwarming, etc. 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 Actually Fred's actor fell asleep while lying in the Great Hall set while they were filming and George left him to get lunch. I saw my girl in theaters on my first date, like 5th grade. Our parents dropped us off at the same movie theater and picked us up afterwards, but left us alone to see the movie. I was not prepared for that ending. When he gets stung by the bees trying to get her ring back, and when she falls apart at his funeral because his glasses are missing, I was never so embarrassed to be seen ugly crying in front of someone before or since. There are several fictional characters from books/movies/TV shows that I could list, but that was the first one that hit so hard. Geez, the movie was already on VHS when I was a kid, but my mom picked it up because it's got the Home Alone kid in it. None of us were ready. Years later they go and rent bridge to Terabithia for my little brother. IMDb is now on their list of greatest inventions. Mice Hughes from FMA. It wasn't his death itself that got me. It was the funeral. Seriously. The death sucked, but watching his daughter at the funeral was absolutely scarring. The English VA for the daughter deserves a GD award for that performance. Why are they burying Daddy? They can't bury Daddy or he won't be able to work. He has lots of work to do. Crying face, crying face, crying face. Easily one of the best fathers in anime. RIP. It's a terrible day for Rain. When Boromir died defending the halflings, I actually had tears in my eyes. I would have followed you. My brother, my captain, my king. The way Boromir, the most flawed and real member of the Fellowship, goes from rejecting Aragorn and what he represents to accepting him as his king made the scene even more heartbreaking. And how, even as he lay dying with 3 arrows sticking out of him, his number one concern to Aragorn was for Merry and Pippin. They took the little ones. My boyfriend and I were just talking about how Boromir and Faramir are easily some of the most tragic characters ever, in their own ways. Boromir's death is one of the saddest in cinematic, and I guess literary, history. Sean Bean's performance in that scene is heartbreaking. It's tragic he's so good at playing strong men with such empathy as well. It gets him killed every time. Apparently, he's having a renaissance. Won't be dying anymore. He's done it 23 times. Web link. And then Aragorn wears his vambraces for the rest of the trilogy. A subtle nod to a fallen friend and, at least in my movie universe opinion, the start of his path to the returning of Gondor's king. It wasn't a nod, it was vastly better stats, then things had like 4 decks man. I'm a 36 years old man who's not at peace with showing emotions, but this scene. Waterfalls. John Coffey in The Green Mile. Captain Miller in Saving Private Ryan. Man. All the deaths, the medic dying is really hard for me to watch. All his boys around him just trying to comfort him while there's nothing they can do and he starts crying for his mom. Effing brutal. Put my legs up. Put my legs up. W. Wade, you got a hole, in the small of your back. H. How big is it? W. About the size of an acorn, Wade. What do we do? How do we fix you? Tell us how to fix you? Come on, tell us what to do. I could, use. I could use a little morphine. W. Morphine? They all look at one another, confused at the request, knowing, as he should know as their medic, that morphine will slow down his heart, and with all the blood loss happening, a slower heart and lower blood pressure means he will surely die. Before they realize that he's not confused, and he knows exactly what he's asking for, and what will happen. He knows a hole that big, in that area, this far from a field hospital, means he isn't going home. All there is to do for him what he's done for many others, and just make his final moments as comfy as possible. Morphine? Sure, give it to him. But Captain. Give IT to him. Prick, oh God. I don't want to die. W, Mama. Mama. W, silence. Damn, what a scene. Visceral. Pretty much all the main guys' deaths gets me every time. Miller, Wade, Carpazzo, Mellish, but oddly enough it's the death S you don't see that kills me in that movie the most. And that's when Miller finally talks to Ryan and says, no easy way to say this, your brothers were killed in combat. Which ones? All of them. As a guy with 4 brothers, that line absolutely crushes me every time. Even now sitting at work. Samantha, the dog, from I Am Legend. On rewatches I'm always bawling when his kid passes Sam as a puppy out of the helicopter. Sam. Protect Daddy. And she did. She was a good dog. That Ewok in Return of the Jedi. You all know which one. That poor groan from the other one when he realizes his buddy is dead. Kills me. When Dobby dies at the end, The Deathly Hallows Part 1. I have to turn the movie off right before because I just can't handle it. His grave is only a few miles from my house. Not being a HP fan, I have never given it much thought. But next time I am passing, I will stop a moment and let him know Emma 9321 misses him. Marley from Marley and Me. Practically had to leave theater. I was in middle school when that movie came out. I came home after the movie and threw up because I was crying so much, laughing my butt off. I'm 35 years old, and I cannot watch any movies, or episodes, about dogs. I simply am not strong enough. Jurassic Park utterly destroyed me. When my son was in grade school, he got the Marley and Me book from the library, and I read a chapter to him each night before bed. After a while it became obvious that it wasn't going to end well, and my son asked if we could bail out, because he didn't want to be sad. I took the book downstairs and finished the last couple of chapters by myself, with tears streaming down my face the entire time. I am so glad we didn't take him to see the movie. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.